Hello and welcome to my processing video. This will actually only be the second video of my full workflow, as I don't think I will have the opportunity to get any clear skies before the Eagle Nebula sets. Hopefully in the future I will be able to make one where I go through all of my process of setting up the gear and taking each image. But for now, I'm just going to use one of the data sets that I've already got here to process for you. So I've got open here Deep Sky Stacker, which is an amazing software that you can stack the images with. This means that they get all of the images that you've taken over one night, aligns them with each other, and then a computer algorithm actually averages out the noise for you. So we can see on the left here, we've got a bunch of tabs for all of the files that I want to create or add to it. And if I open a picture file, I will just locate my images. Today I will be processing the Cat's Paw and Lobster Nebula. And I would just need to select all my lights that I would like to use, which are, how many have I got? I've got 21 light frames of 4 minutes, which means that that is 84 minutes of exposure. So quite a long time on average for me. So that just opens them, and you can actually click on one of them and it appears on the screen here. And you can show that it shows the stars and everything. In the top right, there is a histogram adjustment. So if I move that to the right, I can actually see more data in there. If I keep changing it a little bit and bring that down a bit more, I can actually begin to see the cat's paw in around here. Now, this actually doesn't change anything in your image. It's completely just a preview. Now, if I drag this back up, I can add the dark files and all the calibration frames. So these, I have got a dark library of just all my dark files that I have taken in the past. And because it's a cooled camera, darks just need to be taken at the same temperature as the camera that it was running at, just to make sure that you've averaged out every bit of noise that you can. So we need to get the flats, and they are using a t-shirt over the telescope or lens to remove the gradient. Then finally off some offset biases, which are just another way to remove the noise. So once we've got all of them, you can see down here that there are all of the images that I've added, and I've actually added a lot of them. But there are a bunch of tabs over here, and I'm not sure about the score, DX or DY, but once I calibrate them or register them, it'll show the angle that it needs to be to actually stack them so that they're aligned. The next tab is the date and time that was taken. So this was taken on the 6th of October. The next one is the size of the image. So this is 3008 pixels by 3008 pixels. The next tab is the bit depth. So this one is actually it appears grayscale as a .fits image or image file, but when I register, it'll recognize that it is actually a color image and will convert that to RGB. Next one is the info, which is just the type of file. So in this case is the .fits, which means it stores all the info such as the exposure time, aperture, gain, focal length, and all that sort of stuff. Next one is the ISO or gain. I was using gain 100 for this image, and the exposure was 4 minutes long. The aperture, it wasn't registering because I was connected to a telescope. Full width half maximum is the focus that it was at, and the sky background is just the quality of the background. So if you're in a less light polluted area, that will be a lower percentage. The number of stars is just the stars it has detected before when I've processed this image, and I was getting about 200 about 200 stars on average. So once we've got all that ready, we can actually just check all the images. That will make sure that they are the ones that I want to stack in the image. Once I've done that, you need to hit register checked images, and it will show green down the bottom here, saying that I've got all the calibration frames that I need. I would like to register already registered images. This just makes sure that I have got it perfectly, just so that there's no errors, which can sometimes happen. Automatically detect hot pixels. If it detects some noise that is there in every image, it'll recognize that is a hot pixel, which is sort of like a broken pixel that only registers one color. And then stack after registering, I'd like to do that so I can remove the noise in the image. I'd like to stack the best 80%, which means that I will have, let me just calculate this, I've got 21 times, I will have about 16 or 17 images to stack. Once I've got that already, I can go to the advanced, and this is actually the star detection that I want to use. So I want to use about 21%. I can just check it. No, that is way too high. You generally want to use about 150 to 200 stars. So I'm actually going to bump it up to 60%. Perfect. That seems pretty good. Now the star detection is a bit weird with the lowest number, so 2%, meaning it'll detect the most amount of stars, and 98%, which is the highest, meaning it will detect the least amount of stars. Once I have done that, I can go back to actions and recommended settings. These are all my current settings. I'm using relatively short exposures compared to other people that take astrophotos. I am not using a modded DSLR, but the white balance on this camera is a bit out and can sometimes be an issue. I'm not using narrowband images, so don't worry about those two. I really like Sigma clipping combination method. I'm not sure, it's just an algorithm that it does. And then I've got mask bias, dark, and flat frames. I use RGB background calibration because I just find that works really well. Once I've got all of them correct, I can go OK. Stacking parameters, I just make sure that it's on standard mode and no drizzle. Now this drizzling sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. I believe you've got the dither, which means that between each image or each couple of images, you'll want to move the camera on a sub-pixel level so that it can actually work out what is between those images. So once I've got all that, that's fine. I can just click OK. This brings up a new tab, which shows me I will have an hour and 24 minutes, so 84 minutes, if I stacked all of the images. This is an approximation, and at the end, after it selects only the best 80%, it will tell me how long I've done. So once I press OK, it will start registering the images. So this will probably take 5 or 10 minutes. So I will probably fast forward through all this because you don't need to touch anything once you're doing this. Alrighty, so once we've done that, it loads the image up into just a preview here, and we can actually see quite a bit of nice nebulosity around the Cat's Paw and the Lobster Nebula. I never actually use these settings over here because I just never adjust them, and I feel I don't need to. Up in this corner here, we can see that the actual exposure was 1 hour and 4 minutes total, so it used 16 of the 21 frames. So once I've done that, I know that I need to look for autosave 02, and now I can just minimize this tab in case I need it later to restack, but I don't think I will, and open up PixInsight. Now PixInsight is one of the most powerful astro imaging processing tools. I can open up my image, autosave 02. So once I've got that here, I can see that it's actually quite dark, really. And that's because I haven't stretched it. But before we stretch it, we want to actually calibrate the background and make sure that the colors are correct. So the next thing I want to do is auto stretch. So it'll preview it. It'll do a preview stretch. So I need to hit this button, which means that it will auto stretch it. And that's looking really nice already. So we can see there's a lot of nebulosity around the cat's paw and around the lobster. These dark splotches here actually exist in space. They're not false and an issue because of dust. So I'm really happy with that. But we've got a lot of stars there, and also it needs a bit of color calibration. So the first thing we're going to do is make sure that the background is flat. So we want to go to background modelization and dynamic background extraction. This is just a wacky name for make the background flat. So we need to select that, change these model parameters to 2 and 6. And I know that because this image is 3000 by 3000 pixels approximately, I need to change it to about 75 pixels per sample. So once I hit generate, these actually select areas in the image that have got a relatively low amount of stars. If it's got some stars, that doesn't matter, because the percentage of stars or the ratio of stars to the background has got so much more than there are stars, it will actually do it fine. So I can close that and come over to image target correction, just in case the background extractor decides to have a hissy fit. I can move this instance off. So that just means that it's going to save the exact same as this onto the what we call the workspace, so I can access it again if I need it. We want to change the correction to division, which means it'll remove any gradients or vignetting. Replace the target image, and we can click yes. Once I've done that, it'll do a few calculations, and we can bring this one over, and because this is stretched, it's still going to be quite dark, so we can auto stretch it again. You can see that it's actually smoothened the background quite a bit, and gotten rid of some red there and some blacks, and just made the background a bit nicer. We don't need that anymore, so we can just close that. And then just because I can, I'm going to subtract it to make sure that there is no other background items that I can need to worry about. Stretch it again. Perfect, that's looking great. After that, I can close this automatic dynamic background extractor. Yes, I don't need it again because I've got it here. Now you can see that this is actually looking really, really nice over here. And we have lost a bit of that dark splotch, but that's alright because this is just an auto stretch. I will be able to get it back later. So once we've got that, I want to calibrate the colors and just make sure that they're correct. So I can go to background neutralization. This basically makes the background black, but I can change that. And that's just in the auto stretch there. It hasn't changed anything. Color calibration again. This time it's color calibration rather than background neutralization. Color calibration will just make sure that the white balance is correct and that the stars are the right color and everything in the background is correct. So I can just drag the triangle on again. That means that it will just apply to that image. So that has actually made the nebula a little bit fainter. If you have a look, I can undo it, and it's just made it slightly less more monochrome actually, but that's alright, I can gain that back. Next thing we want to do is noise reduction. So we want to go SCNR, and this actually removes the green, because green is not generally natural in space. So once I do that, I can just drag that on. I want to remove all of the green, and it doesn't change much because this isn't a very green image. If we dive in a bit closer and I undo it, you can actually see that there is green there and no green there. So that just gets rid of it in the background. Now once I've done that, I can go into scripts, and now I'm onto the noisy reduction. This isn't a very noisy image, but I do just like to make this very nice and smooth. So this is a script which is downloadable on the internet, and this is called the EZ Processing Suite because it's very easy to use. So I just open the denoise and I can actually just select the image that I want to use, and it brings up a tab here showing the image. And these are all settings that you can change if you really want. I don't want to, I'm fine with it, and I just click run easy denoise. Now this will take about 5 minutes or so, or depending on the speed of your computer, but it just does, it's got a instruction sheet to follow. Basically that'll just tell it to do this and then this and then this, and that should at the end create a very nice denoise or less noisy image. So this is just gonna keep doing a bunch of processes. I might skip through this because it can take a while. I've had to reopen the image, so it is actually unstretched here, and we just did the denoise process via the script and easy processing suite. So once we've done that, we've actually got to stretch it again to see if it worked, in which it did. It's a lot smoother in the background there than it was, which is very, very nice. But this auto stretch doesn't look very nice because it's actually just doing an algorithm to make sure the background is the right color and the stars are correct brightness and everything. So once we've done that, we can remove the auto stretch because it doesn't look very nice. Go to process again, and we're just going to do SCNR again, which removes the green. And that didn't do much, but that's all right. We can just it may make a difference. So now we're onto the process of where we stretch the image. So we want to go to process, color spaces, and RGB working space. This stretching means that I can actually get the color out of the image rather than it just being dark here. And I just want to pull all of the luminance coefficients, red, green, and blue, down to or up to 1. That means that they're all the exact same level. If it was if they were all different, the actual levels of them would be different when I stretched them. So I just need to drag this across and it can sit there just fine. It doesn't do anything, it just makes sure that they're all correct. So now I want to go to a process called ArcSine Stretch. This is a very nice stretch that actually preserves a lot of the star color and data in it. If we used histogram transformation and the screen transfer function, which is basically the auto stretching like this does, you can see that the stars get really blown out in color and they don't actually preserve the color very well, and it's just a lot of stars in there. So I can remove this stretch again. Go to process, intensity transformations, and ArcSine Stretch. It opens up this tab and it's got the stretch factor and the black point. We don't really know what that is, so we can actually do a real-time preview, and that will show what it is currently now. If I pull the stretch factor up a little bit, you can see that this image is getting quite a bit brighter. I'm actually going to pull it down. Once it's up there, I can pull the black point up, which makes the background a lot darker as well. So I'm actually going to leave it there, apply it to the image by dragging the triangle, and then it will be applied to this image, and then the preview will update. So once I've got that, I just keep adjusting it, and sometimes it may take a couple of tries to get it perfect. And so that one is pretty nice. We're seeing a lot of the nebulosity there, but the background is really bright there. So we might want to back off and pull the black point up a bit more just to keep darkening the background. That's looking really nice there. That's full black point though. We might want to back off on the black point because you can see along the sides here there are some yellow, and that means we're pushing the black point. Once I pull off that, you can actually see that the background is getting lighter. I might want to pull off the stretch factor as well. Apply that again. We can see that we're getting a lot of nice blue stars around here. Come off the black point again, and stretch it back up. It's too bright now. So that's starting to be a nice color there. So I'm going to leave it at that. And I'm just close the preview and close Arcsign Stretch. And that's looking really, really nice. I'm really happy with that image. A few months ago, I would have been very, very happy to post that on Instagram. But now we can see that there's actually a lot of stars in the image, as you can see. So I actually want to reduce that number of stars. So I can either use a process called StarNet, which removes all of the images. So I can just open StarNet. You will need to add the weights file into you'll have to locate them using the tool wrench button and then locate them in your files, and it's already on my computer on my desktop. So once I do that, I can just pull the triangle on, and this will go through a long process of removing these stars, in which I will skip through for you because it takes about 10 minutes. But I won't use this process because this actually removes them all, and I don't want to do that. You can remove them all and then do a few things with the layers and then add the stars back in. But I find that doesn't work. I'm going to use a different process called the Easy Processing Suite Star Reduction. Alrighty, so that process is done, and you can see that it really did take away all the stars, and we're just left with the nebulosity remaining. So I can undo that star net, and we can see that they're all there, and now they aren't. However, what I don't like about this is that there's this really big blue patch here. If I undo the star net, you can see that it's just a really bright blue star. So if I undo that, redo Arcsign Stretch, redo StarNet, I don't like that, and there are some weird artifacts around like these which are just left over from the stars, so I don't like doing that. So I'm going to close the StarNet and go Script, Easy Processing Suite, and Easy Star Reduction. And I just need to select the image, and once I've done that, I just need to create Star Mask for reduction. Now this creates a star mask for me by going through the image, working out what is the stars, and deciding which ones to delete or which ones to cover so that I can edit them rather than the nebulosity. If I didn't create one, I would have to use, or it may delete some of the nebulosity that I don't want to happen. So this will just run through for a bit, and I will skip this again as well. Perfect, now that one is done, and it has auto-selected the mask for me. Now I want morphological selection, and star reduction iterations 5 works very fine. So I can just hit Run Easy Star Reduction, and this is actually a relatively fast reduction here, and this will just make the stars less prominent in the image. So once that's completed, we can see that it's actually a lot less full on the screen there. And if I undo the morphological transformation, I can show it's showing the mask, but you can see that the stars are a bit fainter there. And they just, if we zoom out, it's actually giving a bit of a darkening effect to it. So I'm really happy with that right there. So I can save this, and then I will go into Photoshop and finish off the editing there. But before we go into Photoshop, I will go Save As, Processing, and I want it as a .tiff file. This means that it keeps a lot of the data. Save it as no compression, and 16-bit unsigned integer. And then we just go OK. And that will save it for us in this format, and it will look very nice. So let me open up Photoshop and I will keep going through that. Alrighty, we're in Photoshop now, and we can see that it's saved the exact same as what it was, and I'm really happy with that. It's a bit bright in the background, so I might just darken that by using some levels and curves. But first we want to crop it so that there are no actual image artifacts, and I can really quickly do that by pulling out the edges here and making that a little bit easier to do. Ooh, what have I done? Perfect, that looks pretty good. And just enter. And now I can go to changing the background color. So just image, adjustments, and levels. So this data in there is actually just some lights that are beyond black, which we don't want to use. So I can darken that part there, and that just clips a bit of that black. If I pulled it all the way up here, I'd be clipping a lot of the background data, and a lot of beginners do that, and it can mask a lot of mistakes that are made. But in this case, we really want that nice color of the Milky Way in the background over here, and you can see the orange and black dust in the background. So we want to pull it to about here. But that's the shadows, midtones, and highlights slider. So we can actually slide this midtones slider to make the background a bit brighter, and just keep adjusting it until I have it at the brightness that I want. So I'm really happy with that there. And if I go OK, that'll just apply it there. So now we can see that it's quite a smooth background. Stars are okay, I can edit them later. I just want to, it's a bit crunchy, like quite sharp edges, so I'm going to use the Astronomy Tools action set and just make it less crunchy and more fuzzy. Perfect. If I can Control Z, you can see that it's just made it a bit more fuzzy, and it's just made it a bit nicer to look at when you're looking at it up close. Then zooming out, it's just made it a bit brighter, but that's alright. Control E merges them back down. I'm really happy with that. Now, even though there's not much noise, but there are some blue and red splotches around. I want to remove them by using the color splotch reduction. Hit play. It will do its thing for a little bit. And now we're done. You can see if I can Control Z again. If I Control Z, I can undo that action, and you can see it's just gotten rid of that background really nicely and hasn't affected any of the other image, and it's just made it a little bit nicer. You can't see much on the out in the distance, but when I zoom in here, it's just made it a bit more of a black or grey background that I really like, and I really like to create. So once we've done that, we're pretty close to being done. I do just like to go into Filter, Camera Raw Filter, and this just means that I can remove some of the fringing that's there. So we can see around some of these stars, there's a bit of blue fringing that I don't like. And if we zoom out, we can see around the edges there's a lot of blue stars, which we don't necessarily want. Actually, not too many there. So if we zoom into these stars here, we can adjust that purple hue, and we start to get rid of that blue hue and move it towards the red area. If I zoom out, you can actually see a significant effect on the image, and it changes from really blue to nicely even. So once I've done that, I can press OK, and perfect, it's adjusted it itself. There was a bit of haze the night that I shot this, so there's a bit of a hazy look to the star. I didn't bother removing it because I just couldn't, and I ended up just leaving it because I do like the bit of the glow for it. Just one last adjustment of making the stars smaller. I just do this just to see the effect. If I don't like it, I can just undo it, so I can just see that it just made them a slightly bit fainter. I'm happy with that, and I am basically done. So I'm really happy with this image. These dots here are actually really in space, and you can see a really nice structure in the Cat's Paw Nebula and really nice structure in the lobster. I'm happy that I got one of the arms down here and one of the arms up here, and there's a few bits up there that could have had a bit more nebulosity, but that just comes with more data and darker skies. So the last thing to do, if I want to save it to and post it on like Instagram or something like that, I would just change the image size to probably 2000 pixels. That just makes it a bit smaller, and it's now 23 megabytes rather than 47. But I'm going to leave it like this because I will probably post it to Astrobin, which is a astronomy picture forum, or Ice and Space, which is the Australian astronomy forum. So just once again, file, save. It'll save. Really happy with that. And yeah, hopefully in a couple more weeks I can make a few more of these videos. Maybe that one might have a actual imaging video. I'm hoping to get a really nice image of the Orion Nebula over the next few months, because that is rising in the east, and I've got now 6 months of it. And I've now got the new telescope, the Sharpstar AL90R, is quite nice. I'll actually just take you into Stellarium and show you some of the framing that I will like. Opening up Stellarium, and this will show you the framing of them. And I've got a couple of really nice targets that I'm wanting to image. The Stellarium is an amazing software that just lets you simulate sky at any point for about 10,000 or 100,000 years, plus or minus the current date. So you can see over here there's Orion rising, and over to the west there is the Milky Way setting. Over there with Venus in the middle of it. The Moon and Jupiter and Saturn are over there. But my targets that I'm hoping to image over the next few months include the Horsehead Nebula, which is a really famous one. If I click on it, that's the current framing that I will have on it. So really nice focal length, a lot of clarity in the middle. Another target is I want to redo my Orion Nebula, which will be really close up and nice. And I should get a lot of core detail in it. I also want to image the M78, which is sometimes known as Casper the Ghost Nebula. I can't see the resemblance, but some people can. But that's a really nice reflection nebula, so I'm not relying on any hydrogen alpha in it. Another target is I'm just moving forward time, the Seagull Nebula, which is in Canis Major, and close to it, the Thor's Helmet Nebula. Also, the Rosette Nebula. I tried this, failed miserably. Stars were out of focus. I didn't take calibration frames. Everything went terribly for me that night. And that's an amazing framing for me. I love that. And there's just so many other targets during the summer that I want to image. But because I've only got limited dark sky times, or night time really, I really hope that I get a lot of clear nights in summer now. There's also the Large Magellanic Cloud, Small Magellanic Cloud, and eventually the rising of Carina again back into the sky. And I'm super excited for that, because I will be able to see the Homunculus Nebula over here, which is this really bright star here, and that's the actual nebula in the middle of it that is expected to go supernova in the next, I believe, 10,000 years. But if it did, it would be so bright that the sky would basically be daytime for about 3 or 4 months. So it'd be like living in the Antarctic. Also, there's the Statue of Liberty Nebula. Really love that target. Never shot it, but really, really want to do it. So, yeah, that is my plan for the next couple of months, and that is my current processing workflow. And I think it works really well for the current image that I'm taking. And yeah, thank you all for watching, and see you next time.